I'm standing in front of my bedroom mirror, and my hands won't stop shaking. At 64, you'd think I'd have mastered the art of getting ready for a date, but here I am, changing my earrings for the third time like some nervous teenager. The silver ones? Too flashy. The pearls? Too formal. I settle on the small gold hoops my daughter gave me last Christmas, the ones she said made my eyes sparkle. My reflection stares back at me, and I see a woman I'm still getting used to. The laugh lines around my green eyes have deepened into permanent creases, and my auburn hair, once my pride, now depends on monthly touch-ups to hide the silver threading through. But there's something in my expression tonight that I haven't seen in years, anticipation mixed with terror. Eleanor, I whisper to myself, smoothing down the navy dress I've chosen. It's just coffee. What's the worst that could happen? The worst, of course, is that I'll make a fool of myself, that this man, David, my daughter Sarah said his name was, will take one look at me and remember he has somewhere else to be, that I'll sit across from him, fumbling for conversation, proving that some women weren't meant for love after a certain age. I walk to my kitchen and check the time on the microwave clock, 6:47 p.m., 13 minutes until I need to leave for Cafe Luna, the little place downtown where Sarah insisted we meet. "It's perfect for first dates, Mom," she'd said with that encouraging smile she'd been wearing ever since my divorce was finalized 2 years ago. Cozy, but not too intimate. Good lighting, excellent coffee. What she didn't say, but what hung in the air between us, was that it was time. Time to stop mourning the 32 years I'd given to a man who decided he needed to find himself with his 28-year-old dental hygienist. Time to stop eating dinner alone while watching reruns of shows that reminded me of better times. I grab my purse, the good leather one I reserve for special occasions, and head for the door, my heels clicking against the hardwood floors of the house that still feels too big for just one person. The October evening air is crisp against my skin, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the promise of winter. I used to love this time of year when the kids were small, when autumn meant apple picking and Halloween costumes and the comfortable chaos of family life. Now it just reminds me how quiet everything has become. The drive to Cafe Luna takes 12 minutes. I timed it yesterday during my practice run, though I'm embarrassed to admit that even to myself. I park across the street and sit in my car for a moment, watching people through the large windows. Couples lean across small tables, their conversations animated by candlelight. A group of friends laughs at something on someone's phone. Everyone seems to belong somewhere. I check my lipstick in the rearview mirror and take a deep breath. Sarah set this up through a friend at her book club, a woman whose brother-in-law had been recently widowed and was, in her words, a real catch. He was 66, retired from teaching high school English, loved to read, and had kind eyes. That last part had made me smile despite my nerves. In my experience, kind eyes were rarer than people realized. The bell above the cafe door chimes as I enter, and the warm scent of coffee and cinnamon envelops me. I scan the room, looking for a man sitting alone, probably checking his watch and wondering if he's been stood up by his blind date. Sarah had told him I'd be wearing navy blue, and I'd asked her to tell him I had reddish hair, though I'd been tempted to add, and crow's feet and hands that show every one of my 64 years. I don't see anyone who fits his description, so I choose a table by the window and order a cappuccino from the young waitress with the bright smile and the nose ring. "Meeting someone special?" she asks, and I wonder if my nervousness is that obvious. "I hope so," I say, and realize I mean it. 7:15 comes and goes, then 7:20. I tell myself he's probably just running late, stuck in traffic or looking for parking. But by 7:25, I'm starting to compose the text I'll send to Sarah. "He didn't show up, sweetheart. It's okay. I'm fine." That's when I see him. He's standing in the doorway, slightly out of breath, his silver hair mussed from the wind outside. He's wearing a brown leather jacket over a cream-colored sweater, and he's scanning the cafe with an expression I recognize immediately, the same barely controlled panic I felt 15 minutes ago. He's taller than I expected, with broad shoulders that speak of a man who stayed active despite his years. And Sarah was right. He does have kind eyes, the color of coffee with just a touch of cream. He spots me, the woman in navy blue with reddish hair, sitting alone by the window, and his face breaks into a relieved smile. He raises his hand in a small wave and starts walking toward me, and that's when something strange happens. My heart doesn't just flutter with first date nerves, it begins to race with a recognition I can't quite place. Something about the way he moves, the tilt of his head, the shape of his smile. "Eleanor?" he asks when he reaches my table, and his voice sends a shiver down my spine that has nothing to do with the October evening. "Yes," I manage to say, standing to shake his hand. "You must be David." His grip is warm and firm, and he holds my hand just a moment longer than necessary. "I'm so sorry I'm late. I couldn't find parking, and then I sat in my car for 10 minutes trying to work up the courage to come in." I laugh, and it comes out more naturally than I expected. I did the exact same thing. Except I also changed my earrings 3 times and practiced what I was going to say. "And what were you going to say?" I feel my cheeks warm, something incredibly witty and charming that would make you forget I'm old enough to have grandchildren. "Do you have grandchildren?" "2. Emma's 8 and Jack is 5. They're the lights of my life." I pause, studying his face. "Do you have any?" Something flickers across his expression. Surprise? Recognition? 3 granddaughters. The oldest just turned 9. We settle into our chairs, and he orders black coffee from the waitress, who's been watching our interaction with undisguised interest. There's something comfortable about this, more comfortable than I expected, as if we've done this before. The conversation flows easily. We talk about our children, our careers, the books we've been reading. He taught English at the local high school for 35 years before retiring, and his eyes light up when he mentions his favorite writers: Steinbeck, Morrison, Frost. "Robert Frost," I repeat, and something tugs at my memory. I used to love his poetry when I was younger. "Two roads diverged in a yellow wood," he quotes softly, and I find myself finishing the line with him. "And sorry I could not travel both." We stare at each other for a moment, and I feel that strange recognition again, stronger this time. There's something about his voice, about the way he holds his coffee cup, about the small scar above his left eyebrow that I swear I've seen before. "David," I say slowly, "this might sound strange, but do we know each other? I mean, from before tonight?" He sets down his cup carefully, and when he looks at me, his eyes are soft with something that might be wonder. "What's your maiden name, Eleanor?" "Morrison, Eleanor Morrison." The words feel strange on my tongue. It's been over 30 years since I've said them out loud. He's quiet for a long moment, studying my face with an intensity that makes me self-conscious. Then, very quietly, he says, "Ellie?" The cafe seems to fade around us. The chatter of other conversations, the hiss of the espresso machine, the soft jazz playing overhead. It all becomes background noise to the sound of my own heartbeat. Because suddenly, impossibly, I see him. Not the 66-year-old man sitting across from me, but the 18-year-old boy with the unruly hair and the poetry books, who used to meet me by the oak tree behind the high school library. "Danny?" I whisper. His smile is radiant and heartbreaking at the same time. "I can't believe it's you." Daniel Patrick McKenna, my first love, my first heartbreak, my first everything. The boy who wrote me poems on notebook paper and kissed me for the first time during a thunderstorm in the summer of 1968. The boy who left for college in California and promised to write, promised to come back, promised that distance couldn't change what we had. The boy who broke my heart when the letters stopped coming and I realized that some promises were made to be broken. I'm staring at him, trying to reconcile the man before me with the boy in my memories. The silver hair, the lines around his eyes, the way his hands have aged. But underneath all of that, he's still Danny, still the boy who could make me laugh until I cried, who knew exactly what to say when my father was being difficult, who made me believe that love was something worth fighting for. How is this possible? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, he says, and his voice is rough with emotion. Sarah, your daughter Sarah, she works with my sister-in-law, Maggie. When Maggie described you, something clicked, but I couldn't be sure. The name was different, and it's been so many years. You knew it might be me? I hoped, he admits. God, Ellie, I hoped so much that I almost didn't come tonight. I was terrified of being wrong, of making a fool of myself over something that happened half a century ago. Half a century. The words hang between us, heavy with the weight of all those years, all those experiences that shaped us into the people we are now. We're not 18 anymore. We're not the same people who fell in love in the summer of 1968 and thought the world was full of infinite possibilities. But sitting here, looking at him, I feel something I haven't felt in years, the possibility of magic. The waitress refills our coffee cups, and I notice that my hands are steadier now, even though my heart is still racing. Danny, I can't think of him as David, he'll always be Danny to me, is watching me with the same intensity he used to have when we were teenagers, as if he's trying to memorize every detail of my face. You look beautiful, Ellie, he says softly. Different, of course, but still you. I feel tears prick at my eyes. I was so nervous about tonight, about looking old, about not being interesting enough, about not being 18 anymore. Exactly. I laugh, but it comes out shaky. It's silly, isn't it? Getting this worked up about aging when the person sitting across from me has been doing the same thing for the same amount of time. It's not silly, he says, reaching across the table to touch my hand. His fingers are warm and slightly rough, marked by age and work and the passage of time. I spent an hour getting ready tonight. An hour, Ellie. I haven't done that since I used to pick you up for dates in my father's old Buick. The memory makes me smile. That car barely ran. It got us where we needed to go. His thumb traces across my knuckles, and the touch sends warmth up my arm. Do you remember our first real date, the drive-in movie? Romeo and Juliet. You said you chose it because I was taking that Shakespeare class. I chose it because I was trying to impress you, he admits with a grin. I spent 3 hours reading plot summaries so I could discuss it intelligently afterward. And then we barely watched 10 minutes of it because you were too busy kissing me. Best 10 minutes of my life up to that point. We're both laughing now, and it feels like stepping back in time. But there's something bittersweet about it too, because we both know how that story ended. The laughter fades, and we sit quietly for a moment, the weight of unspoken history settling between us. Danny, I say finally, what happened to us? To the letters, to the promises we made? His expression grows serious, and he pulls his hand away from mine to run it through his silver hair, a gesture so familiar it makes my chest ache. I was young and stupid and scared, he says. College was overwhelming. I felt like I was drowning in my classes, in trying to fit in, and being 3,000 miles away from everything I knew. I kept meaning to write, but weeks would go by, and then it felt like too much time had passed, like anything I said would sound inadequate. So you just stopped? I stopped, he confirms, and his voice is heavy with regret. By the time I realized what a mistake I was making, I heard through friends that you were dating someone else, a college guy from your school. I close my eyes, remembering. Robert. I married him 2 years later. I know. My mother told me when I came home for Christmas my junior year. She said, "You looked happy at the wedding." He pauses. "Did you love him?" The question is complicated, loaded with decades of marriage and disappointment and compromise. I thought I did. I loved the idea of him, the stability he represented. He was safe, reliable, nothing like you. I meet his eyes. But it wasn't the same. It was never the same as what we had. I'm sorry, Ellie, for disappearing, for hurting you, for being too much of a coward to fight for us when I should have. We were kids, Danny. We didn't know what we were doing. Maybe, but I've regretted it every day since. He reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out something small and folded, a piece of paper that looks like it's been handled countless times. I brought this tonight, just in case you really were my Ellie. He unfolds the paper carefully, and I see my own handwriting from 56 years ago, faded but still legible. It's a poem I wrote for him, something silly and romantic about love lasting forever and two hearts beating as one. The kind of thing that makes you cringe when you're older and supposedly wiser. Except right now, it doesn't make me cringe at all. Right now, it makes me want to cry. "You kept it," I whisper. "I kept everything. Your letters, the ticket stubs from our dates, the pressed flower you gave me from your mother's garden." I used to tell myself it was just nostalgia, but the truth is, I never got over you. I got married, had children, built a life, but there was always this part of me that wondered what if? What if I hadn't been such a fool? What if I'd fought harder? What if you were still out there somewhere, thinking about me the way I was thinking about you? I'm crying now, not caring that people at other tables might be watching. I thought about you too, more than I should have, especially when things got difficult with Robert. I used to wonder if you were happy, if you remembered me, if you ever regretted leaving the way you did. "Every day," he says firmly. The young waitress approaches our table hesitantly. "Is everything okay here? Can I get you anything else?" "We're fine," I manage to say, wiping my eyes with my napkin. "Just remembering old times." She nods and retreats, but I catch her exchanging a meaningful look with the barista. They probably think we're having some kind of breakup, not realizing they're witnessing something much more complicated. A love story, picking up where it left off after more than half a century. "Tell me about your life," I say when I've composed myself. "Your wife, your children. I want to know everything." His face softens. "Margaret. She passed away 3 years ago, cancer. She was a good woman, a wonderful mother to our kids. We had a solid marriage, companionable, you know. She knew about you, actually." I told her about my first love when we were dating, and she used to tease me about it sometimes. "She sounds lovely." She was, and she would have liked you, I think. She had your sense of humor, your way of seeing the bright side of things. He pauses. "What about your marriage? Sarah mentioned you were recently divorced." 32 years, I say. 32 years of thinking I was building something meaningful, only to discover that my husband had been building something else entirely with someone half my age. I'm sorry. Don't be. It hurt at the time, but I'm starting to think it might have been the best thing that ever happened to me. I was sleepwalking through my life, settling for comfortable when I could have been reaching for extraordinary. And now, I look at him, really look at him, taking in the crow's feet that speak of laughter, the strong hands that have worked and loved and lost, the gentle way he holds himself, as if he's learned to be careful with other people's hearts. Now, I'm sitting in a cafe with my first love, feeling like that 18-year-old girl who thought anything was possible. Anything is possible, he says. Maybe not in the same way, maybe not with the same bodies or the same circumstances, but the important things. The way you make me laugh, the way I feel when I look at you, the way my heart recognizes yours. Those things haven't changed. The cafe is starting to empty around us. The young couples have gone home to their apartments and their Netflix queues. The group of friends has moved on to wherever young people go on Friday nights, but Danny and I remain, two people in their 60s holding hands across a small table, trying to figure out how to navigate this impossible gift we've been given. What do we do now? I ask. I don't know, he admits. This is uncharted territory for me. I never let myself imagine that I might see you again, let alone like this. Like what? Available. Both of us. Available at the same time, in the same place. Still, he searches for the words. Still us, somehow. The waitress brings our check, and Danny reaches for his wallet, but I stab him. We'll split it, I say. This isn't 1968. Some things don't have to change, he says with a smile, but he lets me pay for my own coffee. As we prepare to leave, I realize I'm terrified. Not of him, not of what we've discovered tonight, but of what comes next. This could be it, a beautiful closure to a story that began 56 years ago. We could say goodbye in the parking lot, exchange phone numbers out of politeness, and go back to our separate lives with this perfect moment preserved in amber. Or it could be something else entirely, a beginning disguised as an ending, a second chance that neither of us thought we deserved. Ellie, Danny says as we stand to go, would you like to take a walk? It's a beautiful night, and I'm not quite ready for this to end. I look outside at the October evening, at the streetlights casting golden circles on the sidewalk, at the couple strolling hand in hand despite the chill in the air. I'd love to, I say, and I mean it more than I've meant anything in years. The night air is crisp against my face as we step outside the cafe, and I'm grateful I thought to bring a scarf. Danny offers me his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, I take it. His jacket is soft leather, worn in places, and he smells like coffee and something else, cologne maybe, or just the scent of a man who's learned to take care of himself. We walk slowly down Main Street, past the bookstore where I buy my mystery novels, and the flower shop that still displays the same silk arrangements from 3 seasons ago. The town hasn't changed much since we were teenagers, though there are more antique shops now, and a yoga studio where the old Five and Dime used to be. Some changes are inevitable, I suppose. Do you remember when this whole block was going to be torn down for a shopping mall? Danny asks, and I'm struck by how naturally we've fallen into step together, how right it feels to be walking beside him. The summer before senior year, you were so upset about them tearing down Morrison's drugstore. I pause, because that's where you worked up the nerve to ask me out. You were buying lipstick, he remembers, that coral pink shade you loved. You remember the color of my lipstick from 56 years ago? I remember everything about that day. You were wearing a yellow sundress with tiny white flowers, and you had your hair pulled back in a ponytail. You looked like summer itself. He glances at me sideways. I followed you around that store for 20 minutes before I finally said anything. I knew you were following me. I thought it was sweet. You thought it was sweet that I was stalking you through the aisles of a drugstore? I thought it was sweet that the boy I'd been hoping would notice me was finally working up the courage to talk to me. We pause at the corner where the old movie theater used to stand. There's a coffee shop there now, not Cafe Luna, but one of those chain places that looks the same whether you're in Maine or California. The marquee is gone, replaced by a generic neon sign, but I can still picture the way it looked when we were young. Now playing Bonnie and Clyde or The Graduate or whatever movie we were pretending to watch while we sat in the back row, holding hands and whispering about everything except what was happening on screen. I had my first job at that theater, I tell him, selling tickets and popcorn on weekends. I know. I used to buy tickets to movies I'd already seen just to have an excuse to talk to you. You never told me that. There are a lot of things I never told you. I was 17 years old and convinced that admitting how much I cared about you would somehow jinx it all. Like if I said the words out loud, you'd disappear. And instead, you disappeared. And instead, I disappeared, he agrees. The irony isn't lost on me. We continue walking, past the park where we used to meet after school, past the church where my family went every Sunday, and where, I suddenly remember, Danny and I talked about getting married someday. Not seriously, we were too young for serious, but in that dreamy, hypothetical way teenagers talk about their futures. We'd have 3 children and a house with a big backyard and a dog named something literary like Hemingway or Dickens. Danny, I say suddenly, stopping in the middle of the sidewalk, this is crazy, isn't it? What we're doing, what we're feeling. We're not kids anymore. We have children and grandchildren and mortgages and medical bills and all the complications that come with being grown-ups. He stops, too, turning to face me fully. In the light from the street lamp, his face is serious, older, but his eyes hold the same intensity they had when he was 18 and convinced he could take on the world. Yes, he says, it's completely crazy. So what do we do about it? What do you want to do about it? It's a fair question, and one I'm not sure I'm ready to answer. What do I want? I want to be 18 again, unburdened by the weight of disappointment and compromise. I want to go back to that summer of 1968 and make different choices, fight harder for what we had, refuse to let distance and fear drive us apart. But I can't go back. None of us can. The only choice is what to do with what's in front of us now. I want to know who you are now, I say finally. Not who you were 56 years ago, but who you've become. I want to know about your favorite books and whether you still drink your coffee black and what makes you laugh and what keeps you up at night. I want to know if you're happy, if you have regrets, if you still write poetry. Do you still write poetry? I haven't thought about poetry in years. No, I stopped after you left. It felt too painful, too connected to those feelings I was trying to forget. I kept writing, he says. Nothing good, mostly just thoughts and observations, ways of processing the world. But I never stopped because every time I put pen to paper, I thought about you, about the poem you gave me that night by the river. The poem? I'd forgotten about that, but now the memory comes rushing back. The 2 of us sitting on the old wooden dock behind the high school, our feet dangling in the warm water, the sound of crickets and distant laughter from someone's backyard party. I'd been working on the poem for weeks, trying to find the right words to tell him how I felt, and finally, I just folded it up and pressed it into his hand. I can't believe you remember that, I whisper. If love were measured in forever, he begins, and my breath catches as he recites my own words back to me, ours would overflow the stars. If hearts could speak in colors, mine would paint the world in gold for you. I'm crying again, but this time I don't care who sees. You memorized it. I memorized every word you ever wrote to me. They got me through some very dark nights, especially after Margaret died, and I thought I'd never feel anything but loneliness again. Danny, I know it's too much, too fast. I know we're not the same people we were, and I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is complicated and difficult and maybe impossible. He takes my hands in both of his, and his grip is warm and strong and sure. But I also know that I've been looking for you in every woman I've ever met, and I never found even a shadow of what we had. And now here you are, real and beautiful and more yourself than I ever dared to hope. And I don't want to waste another 56 years being too scared to fight for what matters. The street around us has grown quiet. Most of the shops have closed, and the restaurants are winding down their Friday night service. A few cars pass by, their headlights sweeping across us briefly before disappearing into the darkness. We're standing in a pool of streetlight like actors on a stage, and I have the sudden, giddy thought that we must look ridiculous. Two senior citizens holding hands on a sidewalk, crying over poetry written by teenagers who no longer exist. But we don't feel ridiculous. We feel necessary, inevitable, like this moment has been waiting for us all these years. What if it doesn't work? I ask. What if we try this and it falls apart and we lose each other all over again? What if it does work? He counters. What if we try this and discover that some kinds of love really do last forever, even when the people carrying them change and grow and make mistakes? I think about my daughter Sarah, about how she's been encouraging me to date, to put myself out there, to believe that love doesn't have an expiration date. I think about my grandchildren and the stories I'll tell them someday about taking chances and following your heart and the miraculous ways life can surprise you when you least expect it. I think about Robert and the 32 years I spent settling for something that felt like love but was really just habit. I think about the woman I've become in the 2 years since my divorce, stronger, more independent, less willing to compromise my own happiness for someone else's comfort. And I think about Danny, about the boy who wrote me love letters in the margins of his textbooks, and the man who kept my teenage poetry for more than half a century, waiting for a chance to give it back to me. Okay, I say, and my voice is steadier than I expected. Let's try. His smile is radiant, transforming his entire face. Really? Really. But we take it slow, Danny. We're not 18 anymore. We have histories and children and complications. We need to figure out how to fit our lives together, not just our hearts. As slow as you want, he promises. I've waited 56 years for a second chance. I can wait a little longer to do it right. He leans down and kisses my forehead, soft and gentle and full of promise. It's not the passionate kiss of teenagers discovering love for the first time, but something deeper, more patient, tempered by experience and loss and the knowledge of how precious and fragile happiness can be. Can I take you to dinner tomorrow night? He asks, somewhere nicer than a cafe, somewhere we can talk for hours without worrying about closing time. I'd like that, I say, but I want to cook for you. I want you to see my house, meet my cats, understand the life I've built for myself. Is that okay? It's perfect, he says, and I believe him. We walk back to where our cars are parked, and I realize that everything has changed in the space of 3 hours. This morning, I was Eleanor Harrison, recently divorced, empty nester, woman of a certain age trying to navigate the terrifying world of senior dating. Tonight, I'm Ellie Morrison again, 18-year-old girl who believed in true love and second chances and the possibility that some stories don't end, they just pause until the right moment to begin again. Saturday morning arrives gray and drizzly, the kind of October weather that makes you want to stay in bed with a cup of coffee and a good book. But I've been awake since 5:30, my mind too busy to let me sleep. I keep thinking about last night, about the impossible coincidence that brought Danny back into my life, about the way it felt to hear him say my name after all these years. I'm standing in my kitchen, staring into my refrigerator and trying to plan a menu that will impress a man I haven't cooked for in 56 years. What do you serve someone who knew you when you could barely make boxed macaroni and cheese without burning it? My culinary skills have improved considerably since 1968, but suddenly everything I know how to make seems inadequate for such a momentous occasion. My phone buzzes with a text from Sarah. "How did it go last night? I want all the details." I smile, remembering how excited she was when she arranged this blind date, how sure she was that I would like David. If only she knew that her careful matchmaking had actually been an act of cosmic intervention. "Mom, are you okay? You're usually up by now." I call her instead of texting back because some conversations require voices, inflection, the ability to hear the emotion behind the words. "Mom," Sarah's voice is bright with curiosity. "I was starting to worry. How did it go? Did you like him? Was he as nice as Maggie said?" "Honey," I say, settling into my favorite chair by the kitchen window, "I need to tell you something, and you're probably not going to believe it." "Oh no, was he awful? Did he spend the whole time talking about his ex-wife? Did he smell weird? I'm so sorry, Mom. Maggie swore he was perfect for you." "Sarah, stop. He wasn't awful. He was Danny." There's a pause. "Danny who?" "Daniel McKenna. Danny, my first boyfriend from high school." The silence stretches so long, I wonder if the call has dropped. Then, "What? Mom, that's impossible. David Morrison is 66 years old, and he taught English at the high school for 35 years, and he has 3 granddaughters, and his full name is Daniel Patrick McKenna, and he used to go by Danny when we were teenagers, and somehow your friend Maggie is married to his nephew, and the universe decided to play the most incredible practical joke in the history of blind dates." Another pause. Then Sarah starts laughing, the kind of delighted, amazed laughter that children make when they see magic tricks. "Are you serious? You're Danny? The one from all those stories you used to tell us when we were kids? The one who broke your heart when he went to college?" "The very same." "Oh my God, Mom! Oh my God! This is like something out of a movie. What did you say to each other? What did you do? Are you seeing him again? I can't believe this." Her excitement is infectious, and I find myself grinning despite the nervous flutter in my stomach. We talked for 3 hours. We walked around downtown, we both cried a little, and yes, he's coming over for dinner tonight. "His coming there? To the house? Mom, that's huge. You never bring anyone to the house." She's right. In the 2 years since my divorce, I've been on exactly 4 dates, and all of them were carefully orchestrated to end with a polite goodbye in a public place. The idea of bringing someone into my private space, my sanctuary, has felt too intimate, too risky. But with Danny, it feels natural. He's not a stranger I'm trying to impress. He's someone who knew me before I learned to be careful with my heart. I know it's fast, I say, but Sarah, when I looked at him last night, it was like no time had passed at all. Obviously, we're different people now. We have wrinkles and gray hair and reading glasses, but underneath all that, we're still us. Still the kids who fell in love in the summer of 1968. "What are you going to cook for him?" Trust Sarah to focus on the practical details. I have no idea. What do you cook for someone you've loved for 56 years but haven't seen for 55 of them? Something that means something, she says without hesitation. Something that tells a story. After we hang up, I spend an hour going through my recipe box, looking for inspiration. Most of the cards are splattered with sauce and flour from decades of family dinners, but tucked in the back, I find something that makes my heart skip. My mother's recipe for beef burgundy, written in her careful handwriting on a card yellowed with age. I remember the first time I tried to make this dish. I was 19, engaged to Robert, trying to prove I could be a proper wife. It was a disaster. I burned the onions, added too much wine, and the meat came out tough as leather. My mother rescued me that night, standing patiently beside me in my tiny apartment kitchen, guiding my hands as we started over. "Cooking is like love," she told me as we waited for the stew to simmer. It requires patience, attention, and the willingness to try again when things don't turn out right the first time. I thought about those words often during my marriage to Robert, especially during the difficult years when we seemed to be living parallel lives rather than sharing one. Maybe I should have tried harder, been more patient, paid better attention to the signs that we were drifting apart. Or maybe some relationships, no matter how much care you put into them, are simply destined to burn. But this feels different. This feels like starting with better ingredients. I make a list and drive to the grocery store, choosing each item carefully. Good wine, the kind I would never have splurged on for an ordinary dinner. Fresh herbs from the little greenhouse section. Butter from the local dairy. I even stop by the bakery for a loaf of their rustic bread, the kind with a crispy crust and air pockets perfect for soaking up sauce. Back home, I begin the familiar ritual of cooking. There's something meditative about chopping onions and browning meat, about the way the kitchen fills with the scent of herbs and wine and possibilities. I think about Danny as I work, trying to imagine what his life has been like, what his house looks like, whether he still reads poetry in the evenings like he used to. At 3 o'clock, my phone rings. The caller ID shows a number I don't recognize, but somehow I know it's him before I answer. Ellie? His voice sounds uncertain, younger somehow. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from Sarah. She called Maggie this morning, apparently, and Maggie called me, and, well, the whole family network is buzzing about our little reunion. It's more than okay, I say, wiping my hands on my apron. I was hoping you'd call. How are you feeling about everything in the light of day? Terrified, he admits with a laugh. Excited, but terrified. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and discover it was all some elaborate dream. I know exactly what you mean. I've been cooking all day just to keep my hands busy. What are you making? Beef burgundy, my mother's recipe. I pause, then add, it was one of the first things I learned to cook properly, though it took me several disasters to get it right. I remember your mother, he says, and his voice warms with the memory. She used to make those incredible chocolate chip cookies. She always seemed to have a fresh batch whenever I came over. She did that on purpose. She said the way to judge a boy's character was to see if he helped clean up the kitchen afterward. Did I pass the test? With flying colors. You were the only boyfriend I ever had who washed dishes without being asked. Good to know I made a positive impression on someone in your family. Your father always looked at me like I was planning to steal the silver. I laugh, remembering my father's protective glare whenever Danny came to pick me up for dates. He was like that with all my boyfriends. It wasn't personal. It felt personal at the time. I was convinced he could read my mind and knew exactly what I was thinking about his daughter. And what were you thinking about his daughter? The question slips out before I can stop it, more flirtatious than I intended. There's a pause, and I can almost see him smiling. Things that would have gotten me banned from your house permanently, he says, and his voice has dropped to that low, intimate register I remember from whispered conversations in his car after late-night dates. I feel heat rise in my cheeks, and I'm grateful he can't see me blushing like a teenager. Daniel McKenna, you're still terrible. I prefer to think of myself as consistently charming. Is that what you call it? We're both laughing now, and it strikes me how easy this is, how naturally we fall back into the teasing banter that was such a big part of our relationship when we were young. Some things, it seems, don't change. What time should I come over? He asks. 7? Does that work for you? Perfect. Should I bring anything? Wine, flowers, a chaperone to make sure I behave myself? Just yourself, I say. That's more than enough. After we hang up, I realize I'm smiling so widely my cheeks hurt. I catch sight of myself in the hallway mirror and am surprised by what I see. A woman with bright eyes and flushed cheeks, looking more alive than she has in years. This is what happiness looks like, I think. This is what hope does to a face. I spend the rest of the afternoon preparing, not just the food, but myself. I choose my clothes carefully, a burgundy sweater that brings out the red in my hair, black slacks that are flattering but not too formal, the pearl earrings my grandmother left me. I want to look like myself, but the best version of myself, the woman I am when I'm confident and content and unafraid. At 6:30, I light candles throughout the house and put on some soft jazz, then immediately blow out half the candles and change the music to something less obviously romantic. This isn't a seduction scene from a movie, it's two old friends reconnecting over dinner. Except that's not quite true either, is it? We were never just friends, and the electricity I felt sitting across from him last night was definitely not platonic. The beef burgundy is perfect, rich and tender, with that deep, complex flavor that only comes from patience and good wine. I make a salad with mixed greens and the pears I've been saving for a special occasion, and I set the table with my good china, the set I inherited from my mother and rarely use because it seems too fancy for one person. At exactly 7 o'clock, the doorbell rings. I take a deep breath, smooth down my sweater, and open the door to find Danny standing on my porch with a bouquet of yellow roses. Not red, which might have been too presumptuous, but yellow, the color of friendship and new beginnings. He's wearing dark jeans and a navy sweater that makes his eyes look even more coffee-colored than I remembered, and he's carrying a bottle of wine that I can tell from the label is expensive. "Hi," he says, and his smile is soft and nervous and absolutely perfect. "Hi yourself," I reply, stepping back to let him in. "You found the place okay?" I drove by it twice to make sure I had the right house. I was afraid of accidentally showing up on some stranger's doorstep with flowers, trying to explain why I was there for a reunion dinner. He hands me the roses, and our fingers brush as I take them. The touch sends that same little shock through me that I felt last night, a reminder that whatever this is between us, it's definitely not just nostalgia. "They're beautiful," I say, burying my face in the blooms. "Thank you." "I remembered that yellow was your favorite color. You had this yellow dress you wore to the spring dance our senior year." "You remember what I wore to the spring dance?" "I remember everything about that night. It was the first time you told me you loved me." The memory hits me like a physical force. We were standing outside the gymnasium, taking a break from the crowded dance floor, and I was nervous about something, probably the way he was looking at me, like I was the most precious thing he'd ever seen. The words just tumbled out, unplanned and unstoppable. "I love you, Danny McKenna." And he'd kissed me right there under the stars, in full view of anyone who might have been watching, and whispered against my lips, "I love you too, Ellie, more than all the poetry in the world." "That was a long time ago," I say softly. "Not so long," he replies, and the way he's looking at me suggests that maybe, for some things, time really doesn't matter. I show him around the house, pointing out the built-in bookshelves Robert and I had installed when we moved in, the kitchen windows that look out onto my small but carefully tended garden, the living room where I've created a cozy reading nook with my father's old leather chair and a table that's always stacked with whatever novels I'm working my way through. "It's perfect," Danny says, running his hand along the spines of my books. "It's so completely you, comfortable, welcoming, full of stories." "It's taken me 2 years to make it feel like mine again," I admit. After the divorce, everything felt tainted by Robert's absence. I had to rearrange all the furniture, repaint the walls, even change where I kept the coffee mugs. It sounds silly, but I needed to reclaim the space. It doesn't sound silly at all. After Margaret died, I couldn't sleep in our bed for months. I finally bought a new one and moved it to the guest room. Sometimes you have to start over, even in familiar places. We settle in the living room with glasses of the wine he brought, an excellent burgundy that pairs perfectly with dinner, and talk while the stew finishes simmering. He tells me about his children, Michael, who's a lawyer in Chicago and has given him 2 granddaughters, and Jennifer, who teaches middle school in Portland and has a daughter of her own. I tell him about Sarah and my son David, about Emma and Jack, and the joy they've brought to my life in ways I never expected. It's funny, Danny says, how much energy I spent worrying about being a good father when the kids were young, and now my biggest job is just being present for the grandchildren. They don't care if I understand their video games or their music. They just want me to show up and pay attention and remember what they tell me about their friends and their teachers and their pet hamsters. Emma made me learn to play Minecraft, I tell him. She was so patient with me, explaining how to build houses and mine for diamonds. I felt like I was learning a foreign language, but seeing her face light up when I finally managed to create something that didn't immediately fall down, it was worth every confused hour. Margaret used to say that grandchildren were God's reward for not killing your teenagers. Your wife sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. She would have liked you, Ellie. She had the same kind of strength you do, the same refusal to let life defeat her. He pauses, swirling the wine in his glass. I hope you don't mind me talking about her. I know it might be strange. It's not strange, I say firmly. She was part of your life for 40 years. She helped shape the man you became. I want to know about her, about all the experiences that made you who you are now. What about Robert? Do you want to talk about him? I consider the question carefully. Robert was safe, predictable. We had a good life together, raised our children, went to their soccer games and school plays and graduations. We took family vacations and hosted dinner parties and did all the things married couples are supposed to do. But we never talked about poetry or stayed up all night discussing books or made each other laugh until we cried. We settled into a comfortable routine, and I think both of us mistook routine for happiness. Do you regret it? The time you spent with him? I regret the time I spent trying to convince myself it was enough, but I don't regret my children or the good moments we had. And I suppose I don't regret learning what I don't want in a relationship. What do you want? The question hangs in the air between us, loaded with possibility and risk. What do I want? I want someone who sees me, really sees me, not just the role I play or the services I provide. I want someone who makes me laugh and challenges me to think and isn't afraid of the complicated emotions that come with living fully. I want someone who understands that love isn't just passion or just companionship, but something deeper, a recognition of souls, a coming home to yourself through another person. I want what I had with him when we were 18, but tempered by the wisdom and patience that come with age. I want to feel like myself again, I say finally. The self I was before I learned to be careful and practical and sensible all the time. I want to remember what it feels like to be seen and understood and cherished for exactly who I am. And what if who you are now is even better than who you were then? The timer in the kitchen saves me from having to answer that loaded question. We move to the dining room, where I've set the table with my mother's china and the good silverware. Danny holds my chair for me, a gesture so automatic and natural that I realize it's not old-fashioned courtesy, but simply who he is, the boy who was raised to treat women with respect and the man who's never forgotten those lessons. The dinner is perfect, if I do say so myself. The beef burgundy has that deep, rich flavor that only comes from slow cooking and good ingredients, and the conversation flows as easily as the wine. We talk about books we've read recently, places we'd like to travel, the ways the world has changed since we were young. Danny tells me about his garden, how he's taken up photography, the writing group he joined after retiring. I tell him about my book club, my volunteer work at the Literacy Center, the watercolor classes I've been taking. Do you still read poetry? I ask as I serve the chocolate mousse I made for dessert. Every day. I start my mornings with a poem, the way some people start with coffee. It centers me, Reminds me that language can be beautiful as well as functional. Do you have a favorite poet now? Mary Oliver, for the way she sees the sacred in the ordinary. Billy Collins, for his humor and accessibility. But my first love is still Robert Frost, he smiles, still drawn to those roads diverging in yellow woods. And that has made all the difference, I quote softly. Exactly. All the choices we make, all the paths we take or don't take, they shape us into who we become. And sitting here with you now, I can't help but think that maybe all those years apart, all those other relationships and experiences were just preparing us for this moment. What moment? This one, right now. Two people who know how precious love is because we've experienced its absence, who understand that happiness isn't guaranteed, so when you find it, you hold on tight. The candles have burned low, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, it started to rain again, a gentle patter against the windows that makes the house feel even more cozy and intimate. We've been talking for 3 hours, and I realize I'm not ready for the evening to end. Would you like to see my garden? I ask. It's probably too dark and wet, but I have a covered porch, and the rain makes everything smell so fresh and green. I'd love to. We take our wine glasses and step out onto the back porch, where I've strung white lights and placed comfortable chairs for evening reading. The rain is gentle, barely more than mist, and the air smells like wet earth and the last roses of the season. Danny sits beside me on the porch swing I had installed last spring, and we rock gently, listening to the sound of water dripping from the eaves. This is lovely, Ellie, peaceful. It's my favorite place in the house. I come out here in the mornings with my coffee and in the evenings with a book. Sometimes I just sit and think. What do you think about? Lately, you. Even before last night, I mean. I've been thinking about you more often since the divorce, wondering what happened to you, whether you were happy, whether you ever thought about me. I turned to look at him. Did you think about me? More than I should have, probably, especially after Margaret died. I'd be doing something ordinary, grocery shopping or watching the news, and something would remind me of you. A song on the radio, a woman's laugh, the way the light looked at a certain time of day. I'd find myself wondering if you were still out there somewhere, if you were happy, if you'd forgiven me for being such a fool when we were young. I forgave you years ago, Danny. We were kids. We didn't know what we were doing. Maybe, but I've regretted it every day since. The not fighting for us, the not trying harder to make it work across the distance. Do you think it would have worked if you had tried harder? If we'd somehow managed to stay together through college and everything that came after? He's quiet for a long moment, considering. I don't know. Maybe we were too young, too inexperienced to navigate something that difficult. Maybe we needed to grow up separately before we could come back together as equals. He reaches over and takes my hand. But I like to think we would have found our way back to each other eventually. Some connections are too strong to break permanently. Is that what you think this is? A connection that was just waiting? Don't you? I do. Sitting here with him, feeling the warmth of his hand in mine, listening to his voice blend with the sound of rain, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Not because of fate or destiny or any of those romantic notions that sound good in movies, but because this feels right in a way that nothing has felt right in years. Danny, I say softly, I need you to know something. I'm not the same person I was when we were 18. I'm more cautious now, more aware of how badly things can go wrong. I don't fall in love easily anymore, and I don't trot my own feelings the way I used to. I know. I'm not the same either. I'm more patient now, less inclined to rush into things without thinking them through. I've learned that love is a choice as much as a feeling, something you build together day by day, rather than something that just happens to you. So, what are we doing here? What is this? I think, he says carefully, were two people who cared about each other deeply once upon a time, discovering that the caring never really went away. It just went underground, waiting for the right moment to resurface. And you think this is the right moment? I think this is the only moment we have. Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed. All we have is right now, this conversation, this choice about whether to see what happens next. The rain has stopped, and the world around us is hushed and clean. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimes 10 o'clock, reminding me that time is passing, that this magical evening will eventually have to end. I should probably let you go, I say reluctantly. It's getting late, and I don't want to keep you. You're not keeping me. I'd stay here all night if you'd let me, just talking and listening to the rain. The offer hangs between us, tempting and dangerous. I want him to stay, want to keep talking until the sun comes up, want to fall asleep on this porch swing with his arm around me like we used to do on his family's back steps when we were teenagers. But I'm 64 years old, not 18, and I've learned the value of taking things slowly. Rain check? I ask. Literally? He laughs. Rain check. But Ellie, can I see you again tomorrow? I know it's Sunday, and you probably have plans, but I was thinking maybe we could take a drive, see some of the old places. The lake where we used to go swimming, the hill where we watched the sunset. I'd like that, I say, and I mean it more than I've meant anything in a long time. He stands and helps me to my feet, and for a moment we're standing very close together, close enough that I can see the silver threading through his hair, close enough to catch the scent of his cologne mixed with rain and wine and something indefinably masculine. He reaches up and touches my cheek gently, and I lean into his palm without thinking. Thank you for tonight, he says, for the dinner, for the conversation, for giving us a chance to see what this might be. Thank you for staying, for being patient with my nervousness, for making me feel like that girl again. You are that girl, older, wiser, more beautiful, but still her, still the Ellie who wrote me poetry and made me believe in forever. He kisses my forehead then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and I close my eyes and let myself remember what it feels like to be cherished. Sunday morning dawns clear and bright, all traces of yesterday's rain washed away by the night. I wake up feeling more rested than I have in months, despite staying up until nearly midnight replaying every moment of the evening, the dinner, the conversation, the way Danny looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. All of it feels like a dream that's too good to be true. But the yellow roses in my kitchen vase are real enough, as is the wine glass he left on my coffee table and the lingering scent of his cologne on my porch swing cushions. It happened. All of it actually happened. I'm making coffee when my phone rings. It's Sarah, of course, calling for the full report on last night's dinner. Mom, I've been dying to hear from you. How did it go? Was it awkward? Romantic? Did you remember why you fell in love with him in the first place? Good morning to you too, sweetheart, I say, settling into my reading chair with my coffee mug. And yes, it was wonderful. Better than wonderful, actually. Tell me everything. So I do. I tell her about the beef burgundy and the wine and the 3 hours we spent talking without a single awkward pause. I tell her about sitting on the porch in the rain, about the way he still remembers my favorite color and the poems I wrote him when we were teenagers. I tell her about feeling like myself again, the self I was before I learned to be so careful with my heart. This is incredible, Mom, like romance novel incredible. Are you seeing him again? This afternoon, we're going to drive around, see some of the old places we used to go when we were dating. That's so romantic I might actually swoon. Oh my God, wait until I tell David. He's not going to believe this. Sarah, I say, and my voice carries a warning note. I need you to promise me something. Don't get too carried away with this. Don't start planning our wedding or naming our grandchildren or whatever it is you're thinking right now. We're taking this slowly, one day at a time. But Mom, No buts. I'm 64 years old, and I've learned that love is more complicated than fairy tales make it seem. Danny and I have a lot of history, but we also have a lot of catching up to do. We need to figure out who we are now, not just who we were 56 years ago. I know. I've never heard you sound this happy, not even during the good times with Dad. There's something different in your voice, something lighter. She's right, and I know it. There is something different, something I haven't felt since the last time I was with Danny. It's not just happiness, it's possibility. The sense that life still has surprises in store, that the best chapters might still be ahead of me rather than behind me. After we hang up, I spend the morning puttering around the house, doing laundry and paying bills, and all the ordinary tasks that make up a life. But there's nothing ordinary about the way I feel, the lightness in my chest, the way I catch myself humming songs I haven't thought about in years. At noon, Danny calls to confirm our plans. I thought we could start at the lake, he says, if that's okay with you. It's such a beautiful day, and I haven't been out there in years. Cedar Lake is 20 minutes outside town, a small body of water surrounded by pine trees and memories. We used to drive out there on summer evenings, parking on the hill overlooking the water, talking for hours about our dreams and fears and all the things we were going to do when we graduated. I haven't been back since. God, it must be 30 years at least. I'd love to see it again, I tell him. Should I meet you there or? I'll pick you up, if that's okay. I thought it might be nice to ride together, like we used to. The idea of being in a car with him again, just the two of us with music playing and the windows down, sends a little thrill through me that I probably shouldn't admit to feeling at my age.